Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is the Transportation for Economic Development, commonly known as the Policy Leadership Group meeting. It is April 22nd, and I'm glad you all are here, and we'll go ahead and get started with the update on public engagement process, and who is going to handle that? Bob Clifford, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Filling in for George Walton today. Just wanted to bring you all an update of where we are in the process of working through the effort of the Community Transportation Plan and the efforts, reminding everybody that where we began and the process of going through 4 distinct steps from understanding the issues through exploring options to making choices and then ultimately finding consensus. We've been out in various parts of the community, 8 community areas, 4 geographic areas as part of that effort, as you recall, a total over the length of this effort of 36 different meetings talking to the communities. It's been going very well. We've been very pleased with what's been happening. As you see, we've had great participation in the meetings themselves. To date, over 1,400 people have attended the meetings. Over 1,000 written and email comments as part of this effort. We've done 2 of 4 telephone town halls. Got also going through a whole social media side of things, Facebook and other elements. Wanted to give you a little bit of that from a dashboard perspective. Seeing that we're seeing in terms of the visitors to the site and gathering information. We get both kind of a good combination of both repeat and new visitors. And that's really what we're seeing also in the meetings themselves, even looking at how people are participating and what the breakdown has been. Facebook, by far, from a social media perspective, has been the effort that we've had the most success with as part of that effort, in addition to the actual meetings themselves. We also, as part of this effort, right in the middle, we call the Issues and Opportunities Report, issued that, and really looking at it from the perspective of where we've been, where we're going, what we're hearing as part of that effort, the feedback that we've been hearing. We organized it several different ways, both at that community level and then from the geographic regional perspective, looking at commonalities and differences amongst the different areas, looking at where we saw opportunities in terms of being able to build consensus and being able to move on. The community feedback, what we've heard so far. This is important, I think, to discuss with you all, is looking at a variety of different transportation type projects, all the way from preserving what you have to building big new stuff and everything in between, if you will. We saw throughout the county 5 what we kind of saw as key priorities, hearing, listening to the community, from resurfacing and new roads and widening to new and expanded transit, also intersection improvements and sidewalks and bike lanes. These 5 were clearly much ahead of all the rest of the other types of projects that we were talking about with the communities as we were going out there and having this discussion. We also looked at it kind of by region, not just from a community area, the 8 communities, but also looking at it regionally in kind of 4 regions within the county. We grouped them, if you will, by what we kind of saw as the difference of roads and transit, and you see they're very close. But what we also did see is some commonality, where we saw that from a road perspective, that's what you see in blue. We saw the northwest part of the county, the northeast and the south county, saw roads as being critically important and a high priority for them. And in green, which was northwest again, central part of the county, if you will, the city of Tampa all the way up and through, and northeast, where transit was a key priority. So we saw that commonality of the northwest and the northeast being fairly common in both. They're both a high priority to them. And then the difference between south and central, of one favoring from a priority perspective roads and another favoring transit from a priority perspective. I will tell you, though, no matter where you are, you're hearing all of the issues in terms of the types of projects being critical and important to moving forward. You also saw one of the things we did, and we called it our kitchen table exercise, where we had actually in the middle of the room, in the meeting rooms, where we had the maps of all the PLG projects that came from your jurisdictions, But then we also asked the public, well, what are we missing? What other projects are out there that you think we're missing, that we're not showing you on the list? We got 350 different activities, different types of projects. 250 of them were unique. You see the distribution of the types of projects they gave us. But what was really interesting was you saw people gather around that kitchen table, if you will, looking at it and looking at the maps, drawing on the maps, having a debate sometimes amongst themselves about, well, we should do this, or maybe, no, we shouldn't do that. You saw that going on, and we really liked that because it was helping drive the discussion and consensus and realization that there are commonalities, but there also are distinct differences amongst what people are looking for and what they feel are priorities. When we looked at the exploring area, now we go into the next stage in terms of what are we hearing, how do we move forward with it. You see the different jurisdictions or community areas, if you will, as part of the regions. We then asked a different question. We said, well, we'll break it into those 5 key priority areas, but now tell us you have to rank them from a priority perspective. What's the highest priority and what's the lowest? Everything can't be number 1. And then looking at that, we again saw some commonalities and differences. You see the orange are those that are the kind of common areas of priority, or the 3 highest, if you will, by part of the county. And what they were doing is they were reaffirming what they told us the first time in the different community areas. We were able to see that as we went forward. They reaffirmed those top priorities. The one thing we saw, though, very consistently was resurfacing, and we've actually broadened it from a perspective of really maintenance of existing facilities, if you will, is really a across-the-board priority. No matter what part of the county you are in, we heard very clearly from folks, you need to maintain what you already have. That's critically important in terms of moving forward. So as we saw that and looked at it, we heard the same thing in the Exploring Option series, as I mentioned. We then started connecting those values and the priorities that they're telling us together. As we start to move towards consensus in this process, we thought it was very critical to connect that process. So in the Issues and Opportunities Report, which came out after the first 2 rounds, if you will, what we really saw was that consensus and that we really need to look at balancing the different needs then from a transit and road perspective. Also saw, though, in those values and priorities that the distinction of safety was very important, mobility was important in terms of values, choices, stewardship, all of those elements, and then how they fit in with the top five priorities that we were hearing from the public. So that was, where we saw that connection and looking to move that connection and that conversation, continue it and move that forward as part of this overall effort, which then leads to really what we see as the opportunities coming out of it is accepting and recognizing that, yes, maintenance is critically important and that there is a consensus that we have to address that side of it. Looking at that balancing, that there needs to be a balancing, and that from a community area perspective in terms of the types of projects, whether they be more road-oriented or they be more transit-oriented, and in some cases they're both. They're one and the same. And then also looking at the issue of safety. We heard that very clearly. We heard sidewalks and bicycle facilities and features being a critical component, safety also at intersections being a critical component, that we have to weave that into the discussion in terms of decision points from an opportunity perspective. Here's where we are now. We're now in the process where we call the making choices. Again, we're back out at the community level basis, looking at the discussion and back out to the communities. Here's where we've been to date so far. We're still moving through this process. We've got another one tomorrow night in Plant City. We'll be out there. And what we're walking them through is we're recapping what we heard from them the first 2 rounds, what we're seeing. We're also now discussing the issue of projects cost money, real money, and they're expensive. And so how do you walk through that discussion with them? I also need to talk about that means you have to address the issue of revenue. You've got to discuss that. That needs to be part of the overall discussion, and asking them, again, how should we move forward in going forward? So we actually take them, and I'm not going to go through each one, but we want to show people there are many different elements that go into projects that people don't necessarily consider. We thought it was important for them to understand all the different types of elements that go into projects, and they vary greatly in cost. You have the low end, looking at sidewalks or trails in the hundreds of thousands of dollars a mile, to the high end on a roadway side of $15 million a mile to fixed rail, if you will, could be in the $80 million a mile range. So you have very distinct differences. They serve very different needs and issues, and we thought that was important for people just to understand what that meant from a perspective of cost, that they understood how that all fit together. The computer is going all by itself here on me. So just moving forward, and I want to specifically point out that Hart Transit, that $1.5 billion, that's 10 years worth of projects, and we made that very clear to the public there, that they understood what that was and how that comes about. We also made it clear to them there are certain assumptions that need to be had. One is growth has to and will pay an increased and equitable share of their impact on the overall system. Tolling, where it's feasible, you would certainly look at. The issue of leveraging other dollars, federal and state dollars, are absolutely critical and will be part of the effort. Those are all key elements of what you do. But even still, you're still considerably shy of all the different challenges and needs you have from a transportation perspective and the dollars that are out there. So one of the things we talk about is traditional revenue sources for transportation. What are the traditional revenue sources? I'll explain through them. You've got at the local level, local option gas tax, up to 5 cents. I'm sorry, I don't know why it keeps doing this. Up to 5 cents that could be levied. Each cent is $5 million approximately. We talk about what that can bring, who pays it. Anybody who purchases gasoline in Hillsborough County would pay that. I'll get to in a minute what it can be used for and how far that goes. So if you use the average for, say, resurfacing, a 5 cents of gas tax on an annual basis would get you about 50 miles a year of lane miles. Your need, Hillsborough County alone, just Hillsborough County alone, is responsible for 7,000 lane miles. So it just making the point of how expansive the issue of transportation is and what the challenges are. Looking at property tax. If you were to look at using that as a source, levying a 1 mil increase, which to the average home, if you will, is $115 per home, would bring you $68 million a year, but that's only property owners who would pay that. Again, just putting it out there so people understood, what that meant. The existing CIT tax. Well, first, there's not any dollars available until 2027. And the challenge, it's not just transportation, it's all infrastructure, and it can't be used for operating, but it would bring $100 million at the current half-cent levy that exists today, 0.5% actually, that's levied today, and then also the local option transit surtax, which could be up to 1%. That could be used for both maintenance, operations and capital. That's $200 million a year. And who would pay it would be those people that are making purchases within Hillsborough County. So just laying out for people kind of the facts of what is. We then go to just making sure they understand you can't use all of these sources to pay for all of the different types of projects and the priorities you've told us. And that's what you see here. From the perspective, it's very interesting, just to give you one quick example here. Say gas tax. Gas tax you can use for resurfacing, on the maintenance side of things. You cannot use it to fix potholes. That's considered an operating side of it. So there are quirks of the different types of sources in terms of what you can use them and how you can use them. And we have that discussion with the public so they understand, as we're talking about, that you can't use them all for all the different types of priorities that you're talking about. So if you recall, the first time we asked them from your priorities, just what are the types of projects you like. Second time we asked, now you have to rank them, and they're telling us the same thing. Now we're saying to them, okay, now we have to talk about the money piece. What are potential palatable opportunities for revenue, and then the issue of if you're king or queen for the day, how would you allocate the dollars based on the types of priorities? And we're doing this Again, at the community level, now, we'll aggregate it both at the community level and at the regional level to see where we are in terms of, are they saying the same thing? And consistently, we seem to be hearing the same thing as we ask the question somewhat differently each time and get the same response from them in terms of how they would move forward. That's the process we're in now. We're still working through that. Kind of just to give you the estimated timeline on where things are. This effort, we're landing in June, coming with you with the analysis report and the recommendations moving forward, but also recognizing there are other things out there. Hearts is in the middle of it will be in the middle of its transit development plan, so that will have to get incorporated ultimately into kind of the finalized plan, if you will, that I would call it. And there may be more more localized community discussions about specific types of projects and so forth that will be part of the overall effort from a timeline perspective. But we're coming in for a landing in terms of our effort and our recommendations and report at your June PLG meeting is where we're going. And then just to let you know what's coming up as part of this effort, we still have 4 remaining community workshops. Then we go to the 4 large geographic meetings where we'll really be focusing on finding that consensus, that balancing between types of projects and communities in terms of moving forward, in terms of an overall plan of how you would proceed forward. And that the final part of that effort will be on May 21st with our final telephone town hall meeting as part of that. I will say that overall this effort has been very well received. One thing we hear very often from the public who comes, you said the ones that have shown up, 1,400 so far, and many of them at each meeting are new to the process, and we catch them up to where we're at, is thank you for doing this. Thank you for asking us what we think we should be doing from a transportation perspective. It's a common theme we hear very often throughout this process. So with that, members, I'll leave it up to you. Any questions or comments you may all have?
Thank you, Bob. Good presentation. Commissioner Beckner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bob, the priorities that we have listed up there, were they all developed from just the actual town hall, the physical town hall meetings, and the teletown hall meetings?
No, I guess the way I would describe when we say priorities, when you say the results that we're hearing, they're coming. It also comes for all the feedback we're getting. That gets weaved into, because we have a lot. As I said, we've got 1,000 comments on there. Some are just comments that aren't necessarily a priority answer, but others are, we really want this or we really want that. So we're including that all within the overall effort. The numbers you were seeing came from the meetings.
So when we're evaluating the priorities, how are we weighting comments versus people that have actually gone through this whole process in person and completed this whole survey?
Well, the first thing we're doing is we're looking to see, are we hearing the same thing? Are the comments lining up with what we're hearing in the meetings? And I will tell you, interestingly enough, in looking at the comments as we're going through it, what we're seeing is it's that roads, transit, it's about the same, that same balance. Remembering, it's not a statistic, what we're doing isn't statistically valid. We're just looking at it from the perspective of, are we getting nuggets of information, and are they saying consistently the same thing? When we go from phase to phase, and so far that's been what's been happening. They have been saying the same thing, and it's not the same people.
Okay, and the reason why I ask that, because I've expressed concerns to staff and as well as the county administrator to make sure that we are getting as large of a cross-section of an opinion as possible, because I would imagine that the demographics of the individuals that attend physically are different than the people that might leave comments on Facebook or through social media. And so my concern is to make sure that we're having all of the cross-section of voices heard, because as the results that are coming out so far that are having the emphasis on roads and resurfacing, it's not so much of a surprise to me if those are being taken largely in part from the in-person community meetings, because I don't think that that's where the younger individuals are going to express their opinions.
Yeah, let me just respond to that. I certainly heard your concern. So while the folks who show up at the meetings get to fill out a form and put it in a box, and clearly that's a much easier connection to make, we're not at all ignoring any of the other sources. So, Bob had listed some of the information is coming through our social media. So 36% of social media is coming from millennials. I have met with at least 3 different groups, the Emerge group at the Chamber, Junior League, and I'll be meeting with about 200 students at USF next week to talk about the process. It's very difficult to get folks in the younger age bracket to show up at the meeting. So we are connecting in various ways to make sure that, to the best of our ability, their voice counts equally with everyone else's.
Great.
So,
and as I expressed to Mike and also the county and to the staff, I think it's just important that while we have these forums, we understand that there's different demographics communicate different ways, and we shouldn't have an expectation of the millennials or anybody else to meet where we want them to meet. We need to go where they go and where they are more prevalent to and feel a place to express their voice. And I just know that in this day and age, most of that is not in person forums and seminars. It's social media or some other electronic.
I'm hanging out in a lot of places I never would have thought I'd be hanging out. Does that answer your question? I'm still not hip. I was never hip. I was never cool. But I'm learning.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? I also wanted to follow up on something, an email I had gotten, someone that was disabled, and I just want to make sure that we have reached out to the disability community. Were feeling shut out of the process because they didn't have access to the actual places to go. And I actually suggested maybe we just do something up here one day to explain what the transportation plan is about and make sure. I mean, we get a lot of, especially at Hart, I don't think you'd hear it, but at Hart we get a lot of concerns from people with disabilities, and I just want to make sure that they're part of the process and we have access for them.
Good afternoon, Liana Lopez, Chief Communications Administrator for Hillsborough County. We have done some reaching out, working with the Mayor's Alliance for Disabilities and some other organizations to make sure we're getting the information to them and how they can engage either through the website or the email address and different ways that they can provide their opinion.
Okay. Can we get, is there even a possibility if somebody wanted to attend, that Sunshine Line would be available to take people to, as we get into the final stages especially, that's going to be critical. I just wanted to know if that would be available to them.
We will certainly look into that.
Okay, great, thanks. Mike?
Okay, thank you. Bob, a couple quick questions about the numbers and the breakdown within each section. So as an example, I'm looking up some of the report itself, and let's say you've got New Tampa / Temple Terrace / Central East Tampa, so on, and you've got the numbers all broken out there. Have you or will you put together some kind of plot point where you know where each one of these folks live to give you sort of a shotgun look and a splatter look at where they're from? Because obviously each one of these are a function of the services that we're already providing, whether it's transit or resurfacing or an intersection that may be extremely bad. Everyone is a creature of their own environment and where they live. So I was just curious, are you going to do that, or has that been done already?
It has not been done. We could certainly do that. I will just caution, though, that's also dependent upon how much of the information they gave us about where they live.
Sure.
And we would probably more do it from just a zip code based, just from a zip code
that'd be fine.
perspective.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
But even at that level, we get quite a few people just give us their name and
Okay.
email address.
Because
if you will.
what I see that really stands out in some of the backup material is the number of people in New Tampa that are supportive of some kind of transit option. And that's something that we don't think about. And part of the reason is that, they have community development districts that take care of a lot of their, beautification and streets and maintenance and everything else that they pay for out of their own pockets through their taxes directly to the CDD. And, that gives you a reflection of, I've got all these other things taken care of, now I really want this other option. And I think that it's imperative for us to get that information somehow so we can make really a good determination as to where to best spend our dollars in each section of the county. As you know, spending in South County is going to be different than in the city of Tampa and Temple Terrace and so on. So, we want to try and, sharpen the pencil a little bit and get us to a real fine point so we can focus if, when we go forward, we decide to do a referendum or something like that, to know what we can tell them we're going to provide to them. So I think that this is that exercise.
Absolutely, and one of the things that we have been driving down is being at that community level, is hearing what their needs and concerns are. But what's equally as important as part of that discussion has been is they then see, well, this is what our community wants. Okay, now I understand what we want, but I also understand that community. It makes sense for them to want something a little different in terms of their at. And that's been part of this effort, is looking at it from that perspective of consensus. It's to your point of it's what locally affects me the most.
Right.
But it's that recognition of it's not one size fits all, because I recognize that part of the community, something else is clearly more important.
Yeah,
than
it's
that.
that balancing act when you say, I want more roads, and I don't really care if they get more transit or vice versa. So that kind of makes everyone feel comfortable with the decision that they may or may not make based on, a ballot question or something like that, which is, I know I'm going to get more transit. I don't really care if they get more roads. We're doing fine here, but we want these other aspects, and I'd like to vote for that because of that particular reason. So, thank you, Chair.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Chris?
What are you doing to weed out the double reads from each of these meetings? The group of folks that travel around to the meetings that have a genuine interest in a specific part of the agenda.
Well, there's a couple things. One I would say is that's really not happening. It's very small. We see new people at these meetings all the time, Part A, but we also are looking at, have you been here before? Have you been at multiple meetings? The way we're doing the data, we can tell that and look at it from the perspective of, trying to get it from so that no one entity, if you will, is driving one direction. But some of that is as much a qualitative look, but we're really looking at what are the numbers, and then looking at that point of ensuring that you are looking at ensuring no one entity is driving one thing. We are collecting the data so that we can clearly see that in the database.
Thank you, Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Chiller?
Clifford, a couple of observations that I wanted to share with you. I just have a little concern, as a couple of the other folks have mentioned, that we're not reaching enough people out there. I've been to one of the town hall meetings, and I didn't see the attendance that I see in some heated events. My concern is, as we go further and further along, there's a lot of people that don't even know what this is. Last night we had a city council meeting. There was a rezoning issue going on, and they were complaining about Fletcher Avenue. What improvements are you going to make? Are there any plans? They knew nothing about this program. And it was a nice middle-class neighborhood. So the signs are posted. You guys are doing a great job. I mean, you're out there. A while back in the city of Temple Terrace, we were doing town hall meetings every quarter, and they weren't that well attended. Well, the city manager got together with staff, and what they did is they started actually reaching out to certain groups, and the feedback they were getting and the attendance, you're going to their home now, not their home, but wherever they're meeting, and the feedback was much greater, much more reflective on their views of what they want to see. Like if you were able to tap in some homeowners associations, some big meetings, church groups. I think you're working very hard, and I know you and your team and Mr. Merrill and the other folks are out there. You're doing it. You're getting it. I just don't want to fall short and get the message out to, the majority of the residents in our county. And I think that there are other opportunities to tap into. I don't have all those answers. I'm just talking out loud, walking through the communities, in our cities, 26,000 people. So I see a lot of people throughout the city, and there's not a big buzz. I don't hear, oh, what about that, Go Hills? I don't hear that happening. You guys are doing what you're supposed to be doing. I see your signs posted. You have one across the street from my house. I mean, in the residential neighborhood, which is great. So the messages are there, but how do we get into that trench? Everybody's busy with their schedules. They're working. They're doing what they're doing, and they may not be taking this time out. We all know what's going on. But I'm just concerned that this has got to be done right. I'm just concerned that there's opportunities that we may not be tapping into, and the everyday folks that are too busy with their day-to-day life activities, ball games, homework, work. So how do we tap into it, and do we go to them, find out where there's a large group of people meeting, and try to tap into that, and then maybe that'll help spread it. So just a thought. I mean,
I absolutely hear you, and one of the things I'll say is the effort has been really looking at it from a broad-based perspective and finding different ways to reach people. We've got meetings using social media, we're using earned media, we're using different elements to get the word out, to get the input from folks. Every meeting gets blasted to, it's, I believe, several hundred now, different organizations of, hey, this, engage, be part of this, as part of that effort. So it's not just putting a sign. I know they're but we're also looking at all different other ways to engage people and get them engaged in this discussion. To your point, though, that also goes to, it's not, this is just one element of it. It's also that element of, as you get more refined, going to the what we call small group meetings, if you will, as part of that effort. And really, your staff has really been taking that effort on and getting out and having that discussion. But to your point, we're looking at all the different elements, all the different ways to do it, and just trying to find more and better ways to do it. One thing I glossed over that I will say, and shouldn't be glossed over, is, the telephone town hall meetings we do. Do we get, necessarily data very specifically to, numbers that we can report back to what we're hearing from them? No. But we get a lot of people participating in those. And we get a lot of questions from folks on those. And, we have thousands of people participate. And even at the lowest level of time, we have 250 people on the call in one play, at any time, asking lots of different questions about transportation. So just trying to find every avenue available to get the word out and really look at it from a broad-based community perspective. We definitely hear you.
And Cliff, for what it's worth, the meeting that, for instance, the one that I went to that was at Temple Terrace, I went to was great. People were having questions. Your staff was manned at every station. I just love to see a lot more people there. That's how do we get them there? How do we engage them? That's really that's the only question,
Sure.
I'm pointing at.
Well, and Bob did a good job of explaining it. And I'll just say two things. First of all, the budget for this effort never envisioned the kind of marketing and advertising campaign that you would have to stand up. I mean, that's a couple $1 million. So we did the best we could with what we had. But I will tell you, on the other hand, I won't mention which meeting it was, but just by way of illustration, because I don't want to kind of call out the community. But I mean, we were at a event at a venue right in the middle of probably 300, 400 houses. I can tell you there weren't 300 or 400 people there. It was within, walking distance. It was well noticed. There were signs up. I think it's just the nature that, of the times, or maybe it's the nature of just people's busy lives or whatever it is. I'm not judging it, but simply the numbers are really sometimes, it is a numbers game in terms of how many people you have to reach out to actually get, folks to show up. I think if we really wanted to stand up the kind of, outreach that we're talking about, it would have been a couple $1 million budget to do advertising, not to promote any particular outcome, but just to promote the event. We had the good fortune of Bright House allowing us to utilize a couple of their digital billboards, which was a help. So we had some help, and that was pro bono. But so it's. I hear what you're saying. I go to the meetings too, and I say, "Gee, I wish there were a couple hundred people here." And they have to kind of calm me down, but it's. Yeah, I hear you.
And Commissioner Chris, then Commissioner Higginbotham.
Mike, I appreciate you sharing that with me, and it kind of plays into the question I was going to ask, is if we took advantage of any opportunities to do a promotion piece in a utility bill, or even the trim notice that's coming up, going out to the homeowner or the tenant.
I think as we move forward with this effort, those would be places that we could begin placing notices, PSAs, public service announcements. There's a whole host of things. And we're kind of drawing to the conclusion of this phase. We'll be back to you on June 11th with recommendations and options. But depending how you all decide to move forward, there would be much more opportunity then to continue to reach out to folks.
Commissioner Higginbotham?
As far as encouraging turnout and getting people turnout, I would suggest on the signs that you maybe just add big box in your neighborhood, or potential body farm. That would probably
Either of those would be wonderful marketing opportunities. I kept saying we should bake fresh bread and cookies and put coffee there, and they kept saying, no, you can't do that. But anyway.
Thank you.
Going back to Mayor Chalura's question, though, I think what the question really is do we have enough attendees at the end of the day that can justify the proposal? I mean, in people's minds. I mean, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of people vote on if there is a referendum, and do we have enough to justify that we should do that, go that way? And I don't have the answer to that. So I guess, do you guys work off a formula, or do you have any kind of statistics or anything that would suggest what we need to have in attendance or participate and engage to justify the outcome?
Well, I guess there's a couple elements there. There's the element of how many people are participating, where do they come from, and then how actively engaged are they from a voting perspective. We're not asking them that question. So that, those are kind of two different elements, if you will, as part of this effort. But remembering there are meetings, there's other types of media, social media, and other ways to engage. At the beginning, we did some focus groups. We've done other to really kind of hone down and get to that point of what are the things we're hearing. Are we hearing consistent messages? And I will tell you, from the point of asking the question over and getting different people showing up at these things and saying the same thing, from that perspective, that gives us confidence that we are hearing, consistency from the public about the things that are driving them.
Okay, good. Commissioner Miller.
Madam Chair, to your comments and to Mayor Chalura's comments, we understand that in some of these meetings, a lot of people aren't showing up, but I don't know what else we could have done to make them show up. Remember, one time we felt there was not enough meetings. We asked them to go back. I think they're double the amount of meetings that were put into place. I know that I've driven around and seen many signs advertising for the meetings, and people show up or they don't show up. I think the end of the day is drawing near, and we can't continue to just wonder what we can do to get people out besides saying come and we'll give $100 to participate. They may come and they may not, but the fact of the matter is that a decision's got to be made as to what we've heard from those voters, or from those people that have been out there, and go from there. Now, one thing that does come to mind, you said that at the June 11th meeting, you're going to bring back some proposals. Am I correct?
Correct.
At that meeting, what are we going to do with those proposals? Are we going to make decisions on them at that particular point in time, or it's just something that we're going to vet out and decide if they're good, bad, and different? What's the proposal there? Because if we get to that point that we do decide on some of these proposals, will there be time enough or money enough to take them back to the public again and let them see what we're talking about?
Yeah, it was our desire, recommendation that we bring back to you on June 11th all of the feedback, all the work, all the market research, and options and recommendations. We will have completed significant outreach. In addition to these, I'm still continuing to do meetings with groups. I covered one of the mayor's groups because Gene Duncan needed to be up at New Tampa. They didn't know who I was. It was in a tent in the middle of a storm, but it was great. It was good. It was good. But so there's a lot of other outlets for information, but I think we will have enough to bring back to you so that we can make a confident enough recommendation at all levels, so that hopefully you will feel at that point you're in a position to make decisions, whatever those decisions are. And then once you make the decision, we do then have to go back out and start fine-tuning individual projects. So we'd be going back out into the communities to begin identifying more granular types of projects, sidewalks, what specific roads, because the experts tell us that in the event we are going to go out and ask for voters to approve something, there has to be a relatively definitive list that people can look to and say, okay, that's what you're doing for us. You heard us, first of all. You heard what we said. This is what you're going to do for us, and here's when you're going to do it, and we're going to hold you to that. And so that's a process that will happen after June 11th, probably for some period of months.
So let's make it perfectly clear. After the June 11th meeting, you will be going back to the public again
Yes.
with signs and everything else again, letting them know where we are and what our anticipated conclusion will be.
Right.
And we're going to hope again that we get more people to come back out.
Well, I think you will, because at that point, if you're all comfortable making, certain decisions, that sort of sets a different table. And now it becomes, if you will, more serious, because now we're talking about specific projects, specific funding sources, and when you start talking that way, I think it gets people's attention at a different level. So I would expect yes.
You say you were at a meeting under a tent when it was raining?
It was great, yeah.
At a church revival?
I will go anywhere that I'm welcome, yes.
Commissioner Hagan.
Well, thank you, and been listening intently to all the comments, and I guess I concur with Commissioner Miller and feel that I don't think we should lose track that we've had unprecedented outreach and community involvement, I think, in the history of Hillsborough County. The reality is people are busy. I mean, you got Little League games, you got Rays games, you got Lightning games now, and a million things going on, and we cannot force the public to attend these meetings. I mean, I've consistently advocated over the past 2 years that we've had these PLG meetings now for us to have a measured and methodical approach. But I got to tell you, I feel it's time to bring this in for a landing. And I'm pleased that we're going to have recommendations and options presented to us in June. I'm all for additional outreach and engagement, but I think that's going to have to be done by staff and by the private sector. As Mr. Merrill indicated, in order to do the type of marketing and outreach that I think we're discussing here, that cost us several $1 million, and I'm not prepared to do that. Fully support the additional engagement and all the community input we can get, but that burden falls on staff. I'll tell you personally, I'm looking forward to hearing the recommendations and the options. While we're not aware of what the specifics are at this point, there's certain things that we do know based on the Issues and Opportunities report, with maintenance and roads being consistently high on the list. We know we have an $8 billion unfunded need with no possible way of meeting our obligations with existing resources. So I'm going to be pushing for the PLG to make a recommendation to the BOCC, if not in June, the very next meeting, and for the Board of County Commissioners to begin making the necessary steps for 2016 referendum. I do not believe we have the luxury to delay. Waiting any longer will only exacerbate the problem, with tens of millions of additional needs adding up every year.
Second.
Thank you. Good comments. Okay, Commissioner Chris.
Mr. Merrill? You know, it is a little bit surprising that we aren't getting better participation in these meetings than we originally anticipated. As important a subject area as this is, and as opinionated as most folks are, we would have thought that there would have been more people, and I know that every effort within our financial means is being made to do that. We've got a handful of meetings that are left. You know, there is a way possibly to get the numbers up. Unfortunately, I wish we wouldn't have had to do this, but sometimes you offer incentives. I know when I've had to do events and I needed to get the numbers up, I always offered good food and adult beverages, and we had a lot of people. I'm not saying we should do that, but, you know, what if we had a raffle for a property tax credit? And, you know, that's not $1 million. But what if we had a property tax voucher for $3,000 and we raffled it off at 3 different meetings? That's $9,000. I wish we wouldn't have had to spend the $9,000, but you know what? If it fills the room, we get a good read, we get the participation we need, it was money then well spent. And it's money that doesn't come out of our pockets, it's a tax credit voucher.
Okay, I will.
Research
Folks,
that
yes.
and bring that back with your recommendations. Or no, we can't wait. We've got
And
You
bake
want to
bread
fill a
and-
room,
Meetings
sometimes you
left.
got to provide an inducement.
Right, no?
comments. Commissioner Beckner and Wales Attorney. I'll just make a statement. I appreciate all the statements of everybody today, but I do think one thing we need to take back to our elected bodies is that we are making transportation the #1 priority. And I think it's just critical that we do that, that we're all doing our budgets. We just have to make it clear that this is a priority. It's a priority over all the other things we've done, from parks to utilities, stormwater, everything. And if we prioritize it like that, we'll reach a good decision.
No, you're absolutely right, and you know, so as someone who's been to all of these, other than the ones where I was out speaking to a group, I mean, there really is, among those who are attending, there really is a different level of engagement. So another way to look at this, the numbers may be small, but the quality of what's happening at the meetings is very, very high. And I believe, just like in any business or marketing situation, they're kind of become an army in a sense that they go forward and they talk to other people, but now they're talking to other people with background and understanding and a wider context. So I'm hoping that that's actually what's taking place. They go back to their professional groups, they go back to their communities, to their neighbors, and that's the way it starts to get spread. It's a grassroots effort. I mean, there's no question about it.
Oh, yeah, and there is, I mean, I've been to 5 meetings, and I've seen a lot of engagement. So I'm really happy with the level of engagement. It's been very thorough. If you walk through the boards with a constituent, by the time you get to the end, they have a very thorough understanding of transportation in our county,
Yeah.
which is good.
And the funding as well.
And the education. And if people, even if one person takes it back to their neighborhood association and tells 10 more people or 20 more people, we're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can do Commissioner Chris' idea. I guess Bonnie's up here. She popped up real fast.
There was a flood of attorneys and
Yes.
financial people. It's like-
The attorneys, and so I guess we'll hear about that at some point.
I'll be writing the
But
checks myself.
They're writing checks. But good idea. Okay. Anything else on the presentation?
No, we will be, we already are scheduling briefings with all of you so that we can begin to put together the recommendations and options for June 11th. So there'll be at least 1, if not 2, individual briefings with you all again. And that may help to kind of flush things out. It'd be helpful to us. Other than that, no, Bob, anything else? No, we're good? Thank you all very much for your support.
Oh, Commissioner Beckner?
How many, once we have the recommendations to us, how many community outreach meetings will there be to have discussion and feedback on our proposal?
We haven't gotten that far
Got
yet,
it.
but Yeah. I guess it'll depend on what the decisions are.
Do you have a specific time frame in mind when you would like to have that completed, the community engagement process? What time frame is
September.
that? By September?
Latest September, yeah.
So then we would be making then a final decision sometime mid-fall?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Great.
Mayor,
Thank you again.
Anyone else? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you.